This update is going to change Tarkov forever. Battlestate Games has already mentioned that this is the last update before 1.0. So because of that, I'm going to go through the hardcore patch notes that we just got and what that means for the future of Tarkov. So the main changes they've announced so far is that Flea Market's going to be disabled. There's going to be increased requirements for hideout zones. Hideout zones don't require found and raid status anymore. They've also mentioned that there's going to be limited hideout ammo crafts. So I think that's going to include M61, likely BP, PAB 9 probably, and maybe a couple others. And they've also said that the spawn chance of rare loot is going to be reduced. And as you can see on the graphic, this is only 1/3 of the update, so there's going to be a lot more changes coming. In terms of what I think about this update, I think the flea market being disabled for the entire wipe, I think that's actually a positive. If you look back at the last wipe and how that first 2-week period went, I think the community sentiment was like really strong and that a lot of people actually enjoyed the flea market being gone. And there was just a new balance to the whole wipe and gear was more valuable, and it just felt like every raid kind of meant that much more just because you had a certain scope that you liked, or you found a suppressor and that was the only one you had in your entire stash. It had a new feeling when you had a big fight and that you won. That previous wipes I didn't really feel. It's gonna be interesting too, because when you find that pack of 56A1 or 55A1 or 762 by 39 PP, it's gonna be more impactful, and you're gonna think about, okay, when should I use this? Should I just top load the first like 8 bullets, or should I just load every mag? How am I gonna spend this limited resource of this high like value ammo? So it's gonna be super interesting to see what happens. Overall, in terms of my thoughts on the flea market being disabled, I think it's going to be a genuine like positive change. I think everyone enjoyed, or I shouldn't say everyone, but most people enjoyed the beginning of last wipe a lot. And I think if we can kind of recreate that for even just a small period of time before 1.0, I think that'd be fun. And then in terms of making it harder to finish your hideout, I think could be mixed. It says increase item requirements. Does that mean they've added, one thing to each hideout requirement, or is it, they've doubled it or something like that? So I don't know how that balances out and what they're like planning on that end, but I think it could be mixed, and it definitely could slow the wipe down like to a screeching halt for some people, stuck on those gas ants or Salewas or those 60 round mags. I think it could be a really big problem. So I don't know about that one. And then for hideout requirements, not requiring found and raid status, I think that's a good change. I think that was just a pain in this last wipe. Personally, I had like 6 or 7 junk boxes at the beginning of last wipe. It was so painful trying to make space for all the hideout items that I thought I needed, or I just wasn't sure because I just needed so many. It was really annoying. So I think that's a great change to get rid of that and roll that back. In that last update where they say they reduced the spawn chance of rare loot, I don't really know what this means. So does this just mean LEDXs in Bitcoin is gonna be harder to find, or is it, in a room where you'd find 56A1 and PP ammo before, now you're finding like PS and PvP ammo for 9mm? Like, what does that change mean? I'm not sure. So that's something to keep an eye on and something to watch. And then going through some of like the community's commentary on this, Tiggs made a good post, I think, kind of speculating on what the next update or the next 2 kind of graphics are going to include. So he thinks that key barter trades are going to be added to compensate for the flea being gone. He also thinks that insurance is going to get nerfed, scavs are going to be nerfed, traders are going to be nerfed in terms of what attachments they offer. You're not going to be able to change out the loot in your secure container mid-raid. Persistent time of day for raids, that might be really interesting if we had just day and night, just as like binary options instead of what we have where it can change over the course of a raid from dawn all the way to dusk. Then labs being locked unless you go through streets, I think that'd be a good change. I think that would be super interesting. The lobbies on streets might be quieter, but I think that would make it more fun, and maybe they could make labs still be really high value loot if it's had that like extra wrinkle to it. He's also predicting a slight buff to skill leveling. I think this is like much needed. The the way skill leveling works right now is just so slow. Like I've had times where I was waiting to prestige because I couldn't get to level 20 strength and endurance in that time. It just takes so long. I think this is a great change just because on maps like Shoreline, having high level skills can actually be like a genuine like advantage. It allows you to get to positions faster, especially if you're trying to rush resort, and then you can get on top of the cliffs looking back towards spawn, and you can just catch people running out in the open, or they're out of stamina just waiting in the field. So I think this is going to be a great change if they go through this. I think skill leveling has needed a buff for a long time, especially given the fact that only streamers really ever reach the max skill level. You kind of have to play 12 hours a day, and you have to play, pretty much nonstop and be, leveling your skills efficiently to even get to max skills. And why even have them in the game if only, a fraction of a percentage point of the game, of the player base, is going to be able to actually get those skills. Some people are arguing to even remove skill leveling entirely. I don't know that I agree with this. I think it adds a cool aspect to the game, and it's kind of fun to go for higher level skills, but I do get where you're coming from. If you say, skill leveling, it removes balance from the game, it makes it harder for new players. I understand all those arguments. In terms of updates that I'd like to see during this hardcore wipe, I definitely agree that key barters need to be added to the traders, because without the flea market, we won't be able to get those quest keys that are really annoying. I also agree with Tiggs. I think insurance and scav nerfs are kind of needed. I think insurance, because right now the way it's played, at least the way I play to take advantage of this insurance system, is that if I get any sort of comparable armor or helmet or gun, I can just toss it and there's no repercussions for me. Even if I, maybe I'll lose a mag of ammo, but I could even take that out, and it's just a no risk way for me to make even more money and, have a risk-free like sort of raid after that fight. So it's kind of just, I don't know. I think it'll make gear more important, kind of like the flea market change, which I think is overall a net positive. And then the reason I am kind of for a scav nerf is because the way the scav system works is kind of broken right now. You play your PMC and you take car extract a couple times, you get to like 1 or 2 fence wrap. You get actually pretty good starting gear on your scav, and you get quest items pretty consistently. At least the way I see scavs, it should be a supplement to your PMC, and it should be, okay, I lost like 3 fights in a row, I'm really low on kits or gear or whatever. I'm gonna play my scav, hopefully try and kill a PMC, or just do a loot run and find some good loot and find a new gun that I can run. But it's not really that way on scavs right now, and I think it's kind of backwards. Like, the people who need the scavs the most have the lowest fence rep, so they get no good gear, no good ammo, no good backpack, no good quest items. It just doesn't make sense at all, really. I think it should be reworked where your scav is kind of tied to your stash value, so the lower stash value you have, the better scav you're gonna get. It's kind of like a unemployment check for Tarkov. It's gonna keep you, running, keep you up and going, but it's not gonna be something that kind of, I don't know, just gives you free quest items like it does currently. Another change I've seen a lot of creators floating out, not even just Tiggs, is that you're not gonna be able to change the loot in your secure container mid-raid. I think this would be super interesting. I think it'd be kind of frustrating if you, like, let's say you need a quest key, you need you need cottage key on Shoreline, and you found it and you can't put it in your like documents case. I think that would be super frustrating if you died on your way to extract. But I also see the argument of making surviving raids even more impactful. But then again, if you found a rare item, why wouldn't you just leave the raid immediately so you can like use that for your hideout or whatever you need it for? So I don't think there's really one easy answer to this problem. I think it's something that they're gonna have to play around with, and it might look very different during this wipe to 1.0. I think the persistent time of day for raids, I think they should at least try this during this like kind of filler wipe, because for streets, they mentioned that could be a place of optimization. And I mean, if you've ever played streets, it runs like shit. So it needs optimization really bad. And I know this is going to be kind of a wish and a hope and a prayer, but if they were to remove Inertia, this wipe could be amazing if they removed Inertia and kind of walk back on that change. I know the realism people are going to be like, if you're running around with 70 kilograms, you're gonna, you know, slide around. You're not gonna be able to move and jump and whatever. But I mean, you can literally get your leg shot off and then sew it back together, and then, or you could just run on it, putting Vaseline on your lips. This game isn't about realism. It's about having fun, and Inertia is just not fun. So if they were to walk that back, I think that would be an amazing change. In terms of some last kind of small updates I think they should make, I think player scavs not being able to select the map they're on. I think, you know, you could turn off streets if you don't have a PC you can run it on, but in terms of balancing out player scavs, that would be an easy change to kind of accomplish that. And then I think the accessibility of M61, especially just Ref as a trader and as a whole, just needs to be like completely reworked. He is really broken, and every time I prestiged twice this last wipe, and every time I did, as soon as I got Ref level 2, I had like meta guns and ammo. So it was pretty broken. I think that needs to be changed, and I think that's like an easy thing as well to make sure this wipe progresses a bit slower and the early game goes for longer. That's pretty much it though. That's all we have so far in the update, and those are my thoughts on, you know, what we've seen so far and what changes I'd like to see in this next update. So feel free to comment your ideas and your thoughts on what I said today and what these updates look like. And then I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.